This is a brief history of Gold Point, Nevada, brought to you by Ghost Town Wonders. Hey, good morning. I'm going to take a road trip up to a place known as Gold Point. I'm going to do some video shoots up there. Gold Point is about 180 miles north and west of Las Vegas. Got some coffee for the road trip. Let's go exploring, make some videos. Gold Point, founded in the 1860s, is a ghost town and silver mining camp located in Nevada. The town site was known by three different names depending upon the ore being actively mined at that time. Lime deposits in 1868 saw the formation of a town called Lime Point. The ore was hauled to a nearby Lida for processing. Operations were stopped in 1882 due to the huge processing costs, inefficient milling, and the distance to the railroads. In 1903 and 1904, a Russian gold field virtually emptied this small district out of population. Interest returned to the district in 1905 when the Great Western Mine opened for operation. In the spring of 1906, there was the discovery of Hornsilver. Hornsilver is a mineral form of silver chloride. It is a superficial silver ore and is polished by desert wind and dust to the dull luster of cow horn, hence the name Hornsilver. Silver ore nearby prompted the district to rename to Hornsilver. Rich ore prompted a rush of miners to the district. May 1908 saw the formation of the Hornsilver Herald and a post office followed just a few days later. The town boasted 13 saloons, several shops and stores. All in all, some 225 buildings, tents, and shacks housed the citizens. The miners followed the ore deep into the ground until about 1908. Then there were court battles over alleged claim jumping, inefficient costs, and the profits were unsustainable for that time. 1915 found the return of large-scale mining operations. One of the mines, called the Great Western Mine, was sold to Charles Stoneham of the New York Giants in 1922. The Great Western Mine was the district's best producer, with over $500,000 worth of gold and silver being produced at that time. That equates to about $7.5 million in today's dollars. In 1927, a miner by the name of J.W. Dunphy went down to the area and was searching for different ores. He came up with a large gold discovery. Within a few years, more gold than silver was being mined in the area. So to induce more growth and encourage investments, the name of the old camp was changed to its present day of Gold Point. This plaque was dedicated to the town of Gold Point in 2004, as you can read. It's a concrete structure that's placed right at the beginning of the town. It gives a brief history of the creation and the existence of Gold Point. This photo is of the paved road that leads into Gold Point. To just give you an idea how remote the area is. That paving was just done within the last 10 years. This is some of the beautiful wildlife I get to see as I'm going out into these areas. This is a pronghorn sheep, or sometimes called antelope. One of the critical things for their survival out in these desert areas is a good and reliable source of water, which there's virtually been none just due to the outrageous drought we've had in Nevada. I spoke with one of the local ranchers I ran across. His family's been ranching out in this area for many generations, and he said he's really having a hard time keeping his water troughs full for his cattle. He's had to move them out of the area. As I was driving into town, I saw this covey of chukar. Chukar is quite prevalent in rural parts of Nevada. They like to live in the dry climate. They're referred to as an upland game bird. They're very skittish and you can't get very close to them at all. They're very difficult to do so. This is a close-up though that I just got from the web. It's not my photo. Continuing my venture into Gold Point, I'm just taking several random pictures of the town site. In walking around the town, I noticed very specifically this building known as the Hornsilver or Town Site and Telephone Company. This is what it looks like now, and you can see this was the building from 1908. Today, this building serves as a part-time saloon, owned and operated by a longtime caretaker who's been in the area since 1970. He's one of 5 full-time residences. Here are a few photos inside the saloon. The pool table shown in the back is supposedly a Brunswick pool table from 1909. Here are some of the artifacts that he's collected and has put up as displays on the outside of his building. Of particular interest, I found these compressors outside of the building here, and if you note, this is called Chicago Pneumatic by Caterpillar. Both firms were in existence right around the turn of the century. I didn't see any date stamps anywhere on this piece of equipment, but I did look up on websites, and near as I can tell, this is probably from 1910, 1912. The other compressor that I saw here was called a Schramm. Schramm was also around the turn of the century. Don't have an exact date on this one either, but it also looks like it's from early 1910 maybe. These air compressors were extremely important tools at the time. They really allowed the miners to get down in the mines and operate their air guns so that they can chisel away at the rock. And in some cases, it probably provided good air for those guys down deep in the mines as well. Here's a photo of downtown or Main Street as it looks today. Here's a photo of what Main Street looked like in 1908. Moving over to the mines in the area, I ran across this mine right here. I looked for historical information on it and I couldn't find it anywhere. I was looking at my normal references and I still couldn't find any trace of this particular mine. I was growing a little frustrated with it, but I continued to take photos of it because I was quite fascinated by the large structures and the big gears and the beautiful views down into the town area of Gold Point. Even some of my more reliable resources for doing these kind of researches called for this to be Seebeck Mine. I was not able to confirm it anywhere that was Seebeck Mine. I was able to confirm that there was a Seebeck gold prospect, but that's all it was, and it happened to be located in the hills just west of this area. After continuous research, I was finally able to uncover a source of information that pointed out to me that this particular place was called the Cook Mine and Plant, which was operational in 1981. And the Seebeck Mine prospect is exactly what it says it is. There was just a bunch of exploration pits and adits that you could see around this area that I have circled. This is a claims map from 1923. Shows the main shafts that were in the area of Gold Point, the one in particular called Western Mine. is shown at the lower left. That was the highest producing gold mine that they had in the area. We'll take a quick look at the others that I got highlighted there: the Townsite Shaft, Orleans Shaft, Dunphy, Dieckmann, and there's a couple others that are off of this map. We'll go look at those as well. These exhibits are much more modern, and they're showing the relationship of the very successful mines in the immediate area around Gold Point and their relationship to each other. Let's start by looking at the Great Western Mine, sometimes referred to just as the Western Mine. This photo that you see here is probably a little bit later, like in the early 1930s, but we'll walk through the history of this mine. I always like to try to find a character in these mining stories, and this person sure was a character. This is Charles Stoneham. Charles Stoneham was the owner of the New York Giants baseball team. Charles was born in 1876 in Jersey City. He was employed by a mining stock brokerage firm as what they called a board boy in the 1890s. He was very adept with numbers and innately shrewd. He quickly advanced in the profession, and by 1903 he was a senior partner of his own Manhattan brokerage firm. And by 1908 he was being sued for fraud by several clients. A compulsive gambler, he was a regular at racetracks, casinos, and other gaming venues. He converted his pleasure and endeavors of chance into a livelihood, and he was outrageously successful at it. But gambling was hardly his only vice. He was also a heavy drinker and fond of the ladies. Although he was married, it was said that he always had a mistress with him. He put together a partnership in 1918, and that partnership and syndicate became the majority owner of the New York Giants baseball team in 1919. Charles was a hands-off owner. He relied heavily on the manager of the team to run the day-to-day operations. However, it is said that him and the manager did have a dysfunctional relationship. In spite of that, together they put together a winning team. They won 4 consecutive National League pennants. Although Charles never visited the site of Gold Point, he always was active in investing in mines. He became the owner of the Great Western Mine in 1922, where he purchased the mine at a receiver's sale. Here's a few pictures showing the inside of the mine and the mill and what looked like was part of the process for the Western Mine. Here's a good photo of the men standing at the headworks of the shaft. That's what it looked like back in the 1930s, and this is what it looks like today. You can see those headworks behind me. Some kind of a slanted mine shaft on the other side. You can see the shaft. I only kind of peeked over the edge, and it looks like it disappears into nothing. I'm not interested in going down there. It's obviously too risky, but I'm over here in Gold Point, Nevada, checking things out, taking a tour. This is what's left of the Western Mine mill. You can see there's an overhead crane right there. And you could hear the wind kind of breezing through the building pretty easily with all the metal. This is outside looking around at some of the other buildings nearby. This is throughout the western mine. This is the inside of one of the cyanide tanks at the Western Mill. This was a normal process of which they extracted gold. What they'd do was dump a slurry into these big tanks. And you can see the blades right there. What they would do is kind of stir that slurry up and then separate the slurry by cyanide and then get the gold. This process would continue through a series of different cyanide tanks. Each of them were a step in the process to ultimately get the gold. This is a photo of the tailings that come from the Western mine. This is what's left over at the end of the entire process. This photo is taken from the tailings at Western Mine. We're looking to the east here, and you can see the two structures out there in the distance. The one on the lower left is referred to as the Dunphy Mine, and the one in the right is referred to as the Dieckmann Mine. We'll go look at those here pretty quick as well. But let's first take a look at the Townsite Mine. The Townsite Shaft is owned by the Ohio Mines Corporation. Originally sunk and developed in around 1911-1912, it sits at the intersection of two very lucrative veins called Orleans Vein and the Welcome Stranger Vein. There was a reawakening of mining activity in Gold Point, starting about 1912, kind of running through 1920. A French mining firm took over the ownership of 5 claims in the Gold Point. They were known as the Orlean. They hired a gentleman by the name of J.W. Dunphy to develop the mines for them. And once again, there was a lot of new activity over at Gold Point. There was even talk about running the rail spur over to there again and developing a water source. Until this time, still most of the water was trucked to the mining area. In 1915, the French company withdrew their operations in Nevada, and it's speculated it was due to World War I. Once the French pulled out of the area, Mr. J.W. Dunphy, who had been running the mining operation for the French, took over with some leases in 1915, and he had promised further development of these mining operations. He did so and became very successful. This is known as the Dieckmann Shaft. It was developed in hopes that they would have an intersection of two high-grade veins. Those veins were called Orlean and the Western. So these veins never did intersect at this particular location, so this had very little production and became more exploratory than anything else. This is what's known as the Lucky Boy Shaft. They also was primarily an exploratory shaft that was looking for a continuation of the Orlean vein. It never had any production from that mine. The Hornsilver America Shaft also was only exploratory. There are no records showing that this had any production. This shaft was located furthest away from the town of Gold Point. This is a photo looking back down into town. Well, that's just about it for the significant mines in the area. I want to turn our attention to the town itself, and we'll talk about some of the influential people that had lived there, and then eventually we'll talk about the demise of Gold Point and its existence today. Martin Mitchell was one of the first to open a store in the boomtown at the time known as Hornsilver, and he's one who stuck around the longest. When the town made a comeback in the 1920s due to the new activity on the Ohio mines, Mitchell kept pace with the times and installed a gas pump in front of his store. After 3 decades in Gold Point, and with their daughters all grown up, the Mitchells left Gold Point. They relocated to Verdi, Nevada, which is on the California line just west of Reno. Every year, though, until they were too feeble, Mitchell and his wife would return to Gold Point to see the assessment work on his mines and claims and visit old friends. He died in Verdi at the end of February of 1961. You know, it's pretty remarkable that Gold Point, which aside from a few months of boomtown, probably never had a population much more than 200. Yet the town sent 2 of its residences to the Nevada State Legislature. One was by the name of Harry DeVoe, and the other was followed him afterwards, and his name was Harry Wiley. This is a photo of Harry Wiley. He's the man on the left. He's over at Gold Point in this picture, out in front of his and his wife's merchant store. Harry Wiley's future wife, Ora Mae Powell, came to Gold Point in 1940. She was a correspondent for the Goldfield Press, and she wrote a weekly column and usually talked about the ongoings of Gold Point. She became the postmaster of Gold Point in October 1942. Ora Mae was very good about keeping a journal up to date. In 1949, she wrote that this is the dullest of all 9 years since I've arrived here in Gold Point. In the 50s, there were only 23 people counted in the Gold Point census. Its fortunes were based entirely on mining. In June of 1955, her husband passed away. She remained in Gold Point. And continuing with her journal, she has an entry in there of January 13, 1961, where she's looking back on the history rather mournfully, stating that I've been here 20 years and seen many changes. Now they are opening up a western mine, which some of the old-timers will remember, but very few of the old-timers are left. I've stuck it out here when most of the time I was the only person in the camp, and always tried to build it up best I can. We had people come and go. I have lots of mining claims that would be worked if we had a mill here, but the little guys don't have a chance anymore. Like always, Ora Mae stayed on and stayed in Gold Point. She was forced to retire as the Postmaster General in October of 1967, when the post office was discontinued. Ora Mae passed away in December of 1980 in a hospital in Tonopah. She was 83 years young. As the sun has set on Gold Point, it's still a great place to come out and take a look. It's got beautiful vistas. It's got a lot of buildings still standing that you can roam around, and sometimes the local bar is open, and the folks inside that bar, when it is open, are very friendly. It's a good place to go visit and explore around that area. Well, this concludes my presentation of Gold Point, Nevada, located in Esmeralda County. Hope you guys enjoyed. Please hit the subscribe button hit the like button, and watch for future projects.